Welcome everyone to another episode of Podium Stories. Today we have a really special guest in the building, a friend of mine. He's the CEO and founder of Scaled Up Marketing and FP Growth. His name is Kersey. At FP Growth, they help financial advisors and planners accelerate their growth and scale their impact by leveraging digital tools. Kurt, thank you so much for being here, man.
Thanks for having me, brother.
Absolutely. So one of the things that I wanted to start with is you didn't start in the marketing side of things. You started building your own financial planning practice, I think for over 6 years, somewhere around that, if that's correct.
Yeah.
And you had a strong career on that, right? And you say on your LinkedIn, I enjoyed my work, but I kept getting stuck. So I wanted to ask you about how you build that and at what point were you like, okay, I want to change fields a little bit and start kind of over again.
Yeah. I mean, it didn't happen overnight by any stretch of the imagination. I kind of fell into the financial planning world in a lot of ways. My dad's been in that world for his whole career, 30 plus years, which he hates when I say, because it dates him immediately. Right. But, so after undergrad, I was actually on track to go do my JD MBA. And had a mentor, a friend kind of approach me and say, hey, why do you want to be an attorney? And I said, well, I think I'm pretty good at taking these kind of complex ideas and communicating them in a simple way and helping people take advantage of it. Right. And he said, well, do you realize that's the same thing you would do as an advisor, except if you go the attorney route, you probably won't actually talk to a client for like the first 10 years of your career. Right. And I said, good point. Maybe I should look at this whole advisor world. And so
3 years of law school and all that, right?
That's right, man. That's right. And I still, every once in a while, I'm a little bit of a nerd. So I'm like, maybe I'll go back and do my JD just because I want to.
I was thinking about being a lawyer as well. I entered at a law firm just to make sure, right? Because law school in the United States is so expensive. But I was already looking for schools. I was preparing for the test. And I was like, well, let me intern for a few months and make sure I actually like it before I spend all this money. And I was like, okay, it might not be my thing.
It's funny to me how many entrepreneurs I talk to that at one point were thinking about being attorneys. I don't know what that's about, but like probably just like craving like knowledge.
Yeah, and competition, right? Way. I think a little bit.
Yeah,
and debating, and I think
that's true.
Similar skills.
That's really interesting.
I don't think we know which route is the right one, so we think about that one for sure.
Yeah, that like critical thinking side is interesting. But yeah, so I mean, the other factor in all of that was like every attorney I talked to said, don't be an attorney, you'll hate it. And every advisor I talked to said it's the best career you could ever get into. So, so I was like, all right, I'll go this route. So all that to say, like, I wasn't the guy who in college, like I didn't take a finance course at all. I was never the guy that was like watching the stock market. Like the money side of it was never really that interesting to me. What I found interesting as I learned more about what my dad did was like the analysis is a small part of being an advisor. Right. The majority of your world is relationships. And I've always been a relational guy. And so that's really what drew me to the career. And that's what got me off to a really fast start. But as I started to work with more and more sophisticated clients, the planning and the analysis side became heavier. And I realized, gosh, I really just don't want to sit in this advisor seat for the next 30 years. And I also realized, I was with an amazing firm that does fantastic work across the US, but that because of some of the restrictions inside of that firm and in that industry, I wasn't ever going to be able to be as entrepreneurial as I would have liked. And so, get out of college, I still didn't know much about myself. And as I learned more about how I was wired and what I really wanted to kind of dig my teeth into, I realized that I wanted to be able to have, build and develop 3 or 4 different companies and like really go after it in that way. And that world just wasn't going to allow me to do that. So I really leaped without knowing what I was going to do next. I kind of took a year where I was transitioning my clients over to other advisors and making sure that process transitioned well. I toyed around with a few different kind of ideas of what my role might evolve into, even like partnering with my dad and what could that look like. And ultimately through that process, I had a few advisors raise their hand and say, hey, I don't know what you're going to do next, but we would pay you to coach or consult around some of this, like specifically in that world, this LinkedIn stuff that you've
Right.
been doing. And so, so I said, sure, like I might as well. I don't know where my next paycheck's coming from,
Right.
so I might as well help out a
I'll
little
take
bit.
it. I'll take it.
And so started doing a little bit of that and realized, gosh, okay, this keeps me connected to an industry that I really love, but doing the part of the work that I probably am the best at,
Right.
and enjoy the most. And so from there, I spent about a year, just me, solo consultant, working with a couple freelance graphic designers to help create marketing collateral as needed, but really doing mostly like coaching and consulting, and got to a point where I realized, you know, a lot of these advisors need not just somebody that can point out the fire,
Right.
but that can go put the fire out. And so I pivoted to building an agency model. And here we are about coming up on 4 years later, 3.5 years later. We're a team of 5, including myself. And none of us are classically trained marketers.
Right.
We've all kind of self-taught, dabbled, have kind of a blend of strategy and creative, and built a full service marketing agency.
And I think from the outside, right, like having so much experience in that industry positions you as the best marketer for those people because you're a peer to them, right? You've been in their shoes for a lot of years, and now that you know the marketing side as well, I think it's a no-brainer for people in the financial industry to work with you versus working with me, which like we do similar stuff, but you have such a great niche there that positions you so in a much better position.
Yeah, I appreciate that. We definitely understand their world deeper than most agencies.
Right.
We understand like what they can and can't do, which is a big piece of it, right? Like it's annoying to try to put a marketing campaign together and not understand the compliance restrictions,
Right.
because you're going to go down a bunch of different paths that just you legally can't do, and you could get in some hot water. But also just understanding that like their business is and always will be highly relational, right? Like we're never going to get to a point where an advisor can sell a financial plan through an e-com site, right? Like that's just not going to exist. And so not that different from what you do in the B2B space. It's about brand. It's about reputation. It's about telling a compelling story that attracts and reinforces the value that you bring to your clients.
So this is something that I want to ask you, right? Because I worked in the financial industry for 45 days and I quit.
Good for you.
And the one thing I learned, I was 20, getting my MBA, just graduated. I had no idea what I was doing.
Yeah.
But
what were you doing? Remind me.
So I was as a financial advisor.
Oh, you were? Okay.
Yeah, for 45 days. Like I said, I got I think it was like license 61 or 63, and then started working, and I was like, okay, this is not it. I'm going to go right in Spain.
That's awesome. You got to it quicker than I did. But.
And I sold my car and the apartment I had just leased, and I was like, all right, I messed up. And my parents were not happy. But, but what I wanted to ask you was, sorry, I kind of lost the train of thought. Yeah, so financial industry, the one thing I learned in 45 days is what you said, right? So much relationship-based. The people that I were working with really were really social, empathetic, right? Like they were really good at building relationships one-on-one. They had big portfolios. And that's something that it caught my eye from the day one. And I think that's something that I could have done better. But I saw that people that were successful at it were doing well. And it's interesting to me how you guys are doing that with social media without losing the high touch, highly relational culture of the financial industry. How are you guys finding a middle point, right? Using LinkedIn, using social media, but still being one-on-one conversations, one-on-one relationships. How do you guys play in that field?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, how we're actually executing on it in a couple different ways. I mean, I think we live in a world now where digital is not an option, it's a requirement.
Right.
And so when you're dealing with something as important to someone as their finances, as literally the way that they put their kids through school or retire or buy a home or put food on the table, there has to be an immense amount of trust.
Right.
And trust is now in those early phases of getting to know a financial planning firm, it's equated to, well, what does their website say?
Right.
When I look them up on LinkedIn, what does their LinkedIn profile look like? Do they have an Instagram account? Like, do they exist? Right. I think in today's world, if you don't have a website, you don't have a presence on social media, you don't exist, or you do and you're shady.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
And so a lot of it initially is just helping these advisors understand that when somebody types your name into Google, what they find is going to forever impact the way that they see your firm. Right. Um, the second piece is starting some of those early conversations in a way that isn't so cold, right? So a lot of traditional quote unquote marketing in this space is done really through cold calling or direct mail, right? It's done by saying, here's a big block of people to go reach out to and try to, in 30 seconds or less, convince them that it's worth staying on the phone for 5 minutes, then convince them that it's worth having a half-hour introductory meeting and build trust from there, right? That's a hard value proposition. It's a hard thing, kind of hill to climb, right? And so what we do is I want to say, hey, before you ever even pick up the phone, or before they ever even have an opportunity to schedule that half-hour introductory meeting, I want them to already feel like they kind of know you, right? And that's the whole purpose of a podcast or of social media content, is to put your brand out there in a way that your prospects, ideal clients, and even your clients feel like they know, like, and trust you more than they did before they saw that piece of content.
Absolutely. And this leads me to a question that I was so interested in about the financial industry is not a very marketing-driven industry, right?
Yeah.
Like you said, there's a lot of outbound, there's a lot of cold calling. Now I'm sure there's cold emailing, but it's very outreach-based. So how do you educate an industry that for them this is very innovative, it's breakthroughing, but they also don't trust it because it's not the way things have been done for the last 30 years? So how do you go to these companies and explain, here's the option B that you have not considered yet?
Sometimes you don't,
right?
Is the short answer. I mean, I think you're touching on something that's really important for the industry, the financial services industry at large, which is you have all these old school banks, all these old school broker dealers that have not evolved with the times, haven't had to evolve with the times, right? They have an embedded brand that's been around forever, that whether people trust them or not is irrelevant because they have no other options. Right now, we're starting to see a world where you have Ally Bank that's popping up. You have, organizations that aren't tied to a physical location. SoFi, right, is doing a ton of marketing generally in the financial services space to build a brand, at least in the US. And then in the financial planning world specifically, you have this, independent firms have been around for a long time. But there's a wave right now of a lot of folks coming from an insurance based business or a broker dealer and saying, I want to be a fiduciary. I want to have that level of independence that my clients can trust in a different way. And so you have kind of this disruption happening in the financial planning world where they're having to think about things like, what is our brand all about? What do we name our firm? How do we get the word out? Where before, the broker dealer or the insurance firm or whoever they were associated with was doing a lot of that work on their behalf. And now as independents, they're having to build it from scratch. And it creates such a beautiful opportunity for them to say, cool, for the first time ever, I get to define the message that I'm delivering to the market.
Yeah, and it's something that from the outside, at least as an outsider of the industry, it seems like the vast majority of financial companies are not doing, right? Like they're not taking advantage of social media, these new opportunities that have come up. And they're sticking to the old ways, right? So what are the main objections that you get during a sales process in that sense of when you go to those companies? What are they telling you?
I mean,
reject the idea.
I could rattle off 4 or 5 that are like the typical objections, which is like, you touched on it earlier. Our business is relational. People don't do business over the internet, right? How do I know if this stuff works, right? Or, before the pandemic that we're living through right now and all of this shakeup, it was like, well, things are good. Do I really need to do anything different? But the truth is, like, I'm a big believer. We talked about both being Gary Vaynerchuk fans. And one of the things that I love that Gary says is don't sell the unsellable. And so, we're practicing what we preach in that our brand and our reputation speaks for itself. oftentimes I'm not having to deal with the objection of like, does this stuff really work? Maybe we were 3 years ago when A, I was just getting started, and B, a lot of social media kind of tide was just turning in the financial services space.
Right.
Now we're at a point where people are going, how do I catch up? I
Right.
know I'm behind. What, like, we can't do it all. What should we prioritize?
That makes sense. And I think, like you said, right, that they're starting to catch up, and it's a different mentality of like, okay, how do I do this? Not do I even need to do this? And I think that mentality, besides the way I think you guys promote the business, again, from the outside, you guys are really walking the talk, right? So a lot of the leads that you must be generating, at least they're aware of your brand beforehand, and you're very relationship based. So we do the same thing, right? Like personally, we have never sent a cold email because we do personal branding. So we build my personal brand and we double down on that. And the best part of my sales process is saying, well, you're here because you saw my LinkedIn post and then you reached out. And now you're wondering if I can do your LinkedIn. Well, you're proof that it works.
Yeah.
So I think being able to show that you're doing what you're preaching, I think it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, I'm weird, right? Because like I believe in marketing and brand, and I absolutely believe that when you can hit a certain scale and certain revenue base, that outbound either takes a backseat or becomes irrelevant.
Right.
But frankly, like we have practiced what we preach in that when a firm is just getting off the ground, my encouragement is, hey, you need a good, solid brand and you need a clear message. And you probably should be creating content, but that's long tail.
Yeah, for sure.
Short term, you need to work your network. You need to be
outbound.
reaching out to people. Like you need to go hustle. And so frankly, we've done an okay job with brand and content strategy. We're starting to do more of it now, 3.5 years in. The last 2 years have been like hustle and muscle and me working our network and building good relationships just kind of on my back.
Right.
Right or wrong, that's how we've gotten revenue in the door.
Yeah. And
get to where we are, you know.
It works what works, right? And both you and I know that content marketing is not going to work. You put a piece of content on LinkedIn Monday, you're not going to generate a lead on Thursday.
And I wish, I think marketers know that. I think some marketers are great at communicating that.
Right.
But there's a lot in the marketing system right now, especially in the advisor world, which is like 90 leads in the next 30 days kind of thing. And it's just, frankly, like, you can edit me if you want to, but it's horse shit, man. Like,
sure.
It's going to damage your brand more than it's going to help. And it's just not true. Like, you might get 90 names, emails, and phone numbers, but they're not prospects for you, right?
Fuck about you.
Somebody scraped them off of LinkedIn or whatever. And like, but advisors are falling for that because they're not educating themselves and they want quick results. And so like branding and content marketing is amazing for the firm that's 5, 10, 15 years in and is in it for legacy and long-term impact of their firm. Now, that's not to say that like we need to be held to results in some capacity. It might be leads, it might be website traffic, it might be email list growth, whatever those metrics are that we're going to be held accountable to. But helping, that's a big piece of what we do, is help advisors understand like what is brand and marketing versus sales and business development. And they're very different things.
Right. So we've mentioned a few times LinkedIn through our conversation, and that's where you and I got connected for the first time I think a couple of months back. So I think it's really interesting to reflect on how networking, business development, but also connecting with our peers and friends has changed through social media and LinkedIn specifically, right? So I want to hear your thoughts on like how you're utilizing LinkedIn and what it's meant for you as well to connect and do business differently from 10 years ago.
Yeah, well, I wish I had the numbers already put together, but our team is working on right now, because I was in a meeting recently and I was running through our client list, and for whatever reason, it just jumped out to me. I'm like, holy crap, like the majority of these clients either came directly from a cold relationship, some kind of cold engagement on LinkedIn, or they were somebody else that I connected to on LinkedIn connected us with this end client, right? Like they spawned originally from LinkedIn still. And so I wish I could go back through the numbers. We're going to go through like all of our revenue numbers and look at like how much business has been generated just literally off of what I believe in LinkedIn is not like outbound, go ask for the sale,
Mhm.
right? It is brand and it's content development. And then in conjunction with that, it's real relationship building,
Yeah.
right? Like a lot of our clients come from me reaching out and saying, hey, I noticed this thing that you posted about recently, and I thought it was really cool. And here's a tool or a resource or an idea that's not even ours oftentimes, that
Right.
like I love Digital Marketer, right? Their stuff is
Mhm.
amazing. Oftentimes I'll go, hey, you should go check out this blog about creating pillar content from Digital Marketer, because I think you would really appreciate it and enjoy it, right?
Right.
And they go, hey, I was actually looking at your profile, like, can we jump on a call for 15 minutes? Like, that blog was super helpful, but I'm no good at this stuff, and the conversation develops naturally that way. And we'll build a relationship over 3 to 6 months or whatever. Some people, it's that week we're sending out a proposal after we have that conversation. Others, it's cool, like, let's stay in touch. Like, I think eventually we might need to, and then guess what? I stay in touch
Right.
and eventually we do business.
Right. But I think, and do you think that being on the financial industry for so many years and getting clients through relationship is now helping you as a CEO as well?
There's
And
no question.
right?
Yeah, there's no question. I've actually said that to the guy that was our chief development officer
Uh-huh.
at the firm that I worked at. He and I still have a great relationship. I respect him a ton. And I tell him all the time, I'm like, you're literally responsible
Right.
for my success as an entrepreneur, because I don't, I think you can in some industries be an entrepreneur without being good at sales, but you have to be really great at ops. You have to be really great at finance. You have to, go out and acquire
Mhm.
business, whatever the case may be. Versus if you want to bootstrap something, if you want to build it from the ground up, you have to know how to sell, and not sell in like the Grant Cardone, like cold
Right.
call your face off way, but sell in like build real, true relational trust and convert that into win-win relationships where money is exchanged.
For sure. And I think that was one of the main challenges that I faced over the first year, because
Mm,
I really didn't trust my ability to sell.
mm,
And I think the problem was I was comparing myself to the Jordan Belfords, the Grant Cardones, the
yeah,
salespeople of the world. And at one point, I realized that's not me, right?
yeah,
I'm a guy that is going to build a relationship with you one on one, is going to put out a ton of content, and I'm going to be very consultative in my approach. But
yeah,
I think a lot of entrepreneurs, like myself, have this idea of like, to be a good salesperson, you have to uh, be able to convince people of buying what they don't need, and it's not that,
yeah,
right? You want to
yeah,
help them, and if that it's a win-win, then even better.
yeah,
But
yeah.
that's one of the main challenges that I face myself.
Yeah, I think that's really good, and that's a great encouragement, right? If there's young entrepreneurs listening, or even young salespeople listening
Right.
in any way, like what you just described, I think is the transition from like ground and pound like sales strategies versus like just putting yourself in a position to serve. Like our approach to building our business and my approach to sales is really more focused on like, I just want to be there
Right.
when the resources and the tools that we have developed can be put to amazing use to help our clients go have a deeper impact, right? Like if I can just make sure I'm putting myself in the seat where they go, hey, Kurt's team does a great job at that, let's work with them,
Right.
then like that's sales, right?
Yeah. And I think it's about being top of mind when people are ready to buy, right?
Yeah,
Because and making deposits of trust along the way, right? Like what you're
yeah.
saying, sending them a resource, sending them blog posts, whatever it is,
And
so
look,
that
that doesn't mean don't ask for the business. Like
right,
I'm good at asking. Like
right,
I'm good at finally finding the right moment in a tactful way to say, "Hey, I think we could be a resource to you.
Mhm.
Are you comfortable with me putting together some ideas of what that would look like? And what's your budget? Like tell me what marketing looks like for you guys right now."
I
And
love that.
really understanding like, cool, how could that relationship start where we start to actually partner on some stuff?
Right. How do you identify that moment? How you're like, okay, we're a good point. We build trust, we build a relationship. Now it's a moment I think I have to ask.
That's a good question. I don't know that I
It's a
can
feeling thing.
answer that like full. Yeah, like it's probably more just reps. Like I've
Okay.
just done it a lot and probably
Right.
screwed it up plenty when I was an advisor, especially, and screwed it up plenty in this business, I'm sure too. But I would say, I mean, at the point where I know that they now understand what we're great at and what we're not, and they understand that we're great at some things that they're not great at, and that I've gotten to a level with them where they know we can generate ideas and good work, then it just is like I would be disrespecting them by not saying, "Hey, I think we can help. Are you open to talking about that?"
Right.
You know what I mean? Like that's
Yeah.
that to me is like you see somebody with a flat tire on the side of the road,
Right.
and you can tell that they're clueless about how to fix it, and you know exactly how to change the tire, and you just choose to keep driving and not even volunteer to help. Like if you're not asking for the business, that's what you're doing day
I
in
love
and day
that.
out.
That's a great analogy, right? Because it's doing them a disservice by not trying to help them.
Well, it's a great analogy because we've all done it, right? Like
Right.
how many times have you actually like I know how to change a flat tire.
Yeah, I don't
I've
know
seen
how to
plenty
change
of
a
people
tire.
on the highway with a flat tire
I'm the
and
guy
driven
with
right by. And how I'm wired, I'll get a half mile, a mile, 2 miles down the road, and I'm going, damn it, I should have stopped. Like where I'm going is not that important. Like I could be an hour late, a half hour late, whatever. And I'll think about that like for weeks later, right? And so,
Right.
and I think like, you know, and that's not to say like if you don't think about that constantly, like you're a bad
Right.
person. But I think ultimately as a business owner, you have to put yourself in that mentality of like when you're driving on the highway and you see somebody that needs help and you have the resources to help them, that like it's your responsibility to go reach out to them and offer to help.
I love that. That's just such a 180-degree mindset shift on sales, right? Because we always think about this being salespeople like Grant Cardone, but it's really like what you just described, just trying to help somebody make their life and make their business better.
Yeah. And I think there's a ton of entrepreneurs that not only do they just like drive past the car on the side of the road and don't offer to help, but like don't ever pull their car out of the garage
Right.
and just think that like that person with the flat tire is going to come find them, knock on their door and ask for help. Right. And like that like in a lot of ways, I think that's what's broken about a lot of perception of what marketing is. Like marketing is creating like you know what a AAA car looks like, right?
Yeah.
What's cool about a AAA vehicle is like if I'm broken down on the side of the road, I know if I see a AAA truck go by, I'm going to flag that sucker down and try to get some help, right? Marketing is like making sure that somebody that's on the side of the road can see your AAA car, right?
And that they know what AAA does for
them,
you.
They know to like grab you, right?
Absolutely. Kurt, I don't want to take more of your time. I know we have to end this here, but I really appreciate you jumping on the podcast. I always enjoy talking to you a lot, and I appreciate your time, man.
Likewise, brother. I believe wholeheartedly in everything you guys are doing. I think you're doing awesome work in the B2B space. For your listeners, like I saw Marty comment on something that from a post from somebody I was following. I don't even remember exactly what.
Right.
And he's done such a good job on his LinkedIn profile that his headline caught my eye. So I clicked on it. And then he did such a great job in the rest of his profile that I was like, huh, I like this guy. We should be and just reached out to him cold. And so there's so many lessons in there, man. But like,
and 2 months
I'm
later,
excited.
we're doing a podcast.
That's right. That's right. Yeah. 2 months later, we're doing a podcast and we're going to partner on stuff. We're going to be friends for a long time. And so
Absolutely.
Just keep doing what you're doing, man. If you're in conversations with Marty and his team, if you're curious about what they do, you should absolutely have a conversation and figure out how to work together.
Kerry, you're making me blush right now, man. I like I said, I really appreciate you taking your time to be here. Where can people reach out to you? We're gonna put the links here, but website, LinkedIn, anything like that?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, for your audience, LinkedIn, like if I can answer any questions or like, time permitting, jump on a quick call, give any feedback or what we've learned as we've built this business, like I'm a totally open book. So feel free to hunt me down and reach out.
Thank you so much. And if you're listening, I appreciate you being here for another episode. Feel free to subscribe or share or don't, whatever. And we'll see you next time. Awesome. Thank you.